Per 9000's game room.
Pitfighter was originally a 1990 arcade game, published by Atari Games. It featured characters who were created by capturing the movements of real people and then putting them into the game, and this was pre-Mortal Kombat. Pitfighter, as far as I know, was the second fighting game to use digitised sprites, the first being a game which never reached our shores. When I first saw this game in the arcades, it looked amazing. Nowadays it looks very choppy, but the SNES version never looked that good in the first place. If you take Mortal Kombat's conversion from the arcade to the SNES and look at it, for the moment ignoring the lack of blood and focusing on everything else, then you'll see that while there are some subtle differences which let you know that the SNES version is a slightly cut down version, you'd probably note that if you were not comparing them side by side, then most likely no reasonable person would really notice that many differences. In comparison to this though, Pitfighter on the SNES stands out like a sore thumb. The difference between the two games looks about as vast as it would if you tried to port Super Mario 64 onto the NES. But at least if you did that, it would probably still play well, which I can't say with this game. Now, the arcade Pitfighter wasn't exactly a masterpiece. It was a fun, violent little fighting game, which was better in premise than it was in execution. I think I mostly enjoyed it because I got to play it with my brother, and it reminded me of some of the films I'd watched as a kid, for example Bloodsport, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. The SNES game, as well as having inferior graphics, no real presentation, only one musical tune, it seems to have had far more hit and miss style gameplay. The arcade machine was tough, but it felt beatable. You'd shove 20 pence piece after 20 pence piece into it, convinced you could reach the end. With the SNES version, however, you get no continues. You're expected to defeat the whole game on one credit, which in a good game like Street Fighter 2 would be a challenge. Trying to do this on SNES Pitfighter though, if you try and play fair and you try and use a variety of moves, it actually feels like you're trying to punch your way through a solid brick wall. It's hard, painful, and an exercise in futility. To complete this game, really, you sort of have to start playing in a very cheap and nasty manner, knocking people to the floor, not letting them back up, and that just makes it even less fun to play. You just knock them to the floor and spam them till they're dead, because that's the only way you're going to win, because if you don't do it, the computer sure as hell's going to do it to you. Now, I'm not saying I don't like angry reviewers. I like plenty of angry reviewers, but that's not who I am. I like to try and give everything its fair chance. But with this game, I have to say that it is one of the worst Super Nintendo games that I have ever played. I wouldn't recommend anyone buy it under any circumstances, really. If you're a collector and you see it for £1 and plan to throw it in the cupboard with some of your other games and just forget about it, then yeah, sure. Or if you're trying to make a full set. But if you're looking for something that's worth more than this, something you actually plan on playing, that you actually expect to give you some form of enjoyment, then this game is the absolute last game you should buy. I cannot describe it any better than just saying it is a wretched turd. It's an absolute waste of a cartridge. I have seen fan-made games made by one dude in like a week, which deserved to be printed to cartridge far more than this game. This is a prime example of just grabbing an arcade game and crushing it onto a console, no effort, just relying on the name to sell it. It actually brings my piss to the boil. If I had to give this game a score, 0.5 out of 10. And that's being generous. That's recognising the fact that even for the most awful game, some human effort has gone into putting it into code. Okay, that's Kerr9000 signing off, saying, as long as you're not playing Pitfighter and you're playing something halfway decent, keep on gaming.